Not too long ago we had an update to Cemu, and then the fork which allows us to use both screens on the Thor incorporated this update to it. Now the update wasn't very substantial, but it did allow some more games to boot up. But some of the bigger titles I hoped would be playable still aren't there yet. It's also nice that we can now suspend the game when we close the lid, and the game will still be there when we open it up. But I have noticed the gamepad screen will freeze, so you'll have to quick toggle this off and on to make sure it works properly again. And I'll also leave a link in the description to this fork of Cemu for you to download. I haven't really seen any in-depth videos recently for Wii U on the Thor, so I figured I'd do a showcase and show off some games I'm personally interested in. The list of games I have for the most part are games that are still exclusive to the Wii U or have some interesting second screen functionality. There are some games that are just interesting ports for the Wii U, but unfortunately not all of them run. As an example, with Splinter Blacklist, you can just play this in GameHub instead. And some games I just grabbed because it's a console version that just works well in Cemu. So, like with the first game I'll be showing, which is 007 Legends, it runs great in Cemu. But its other versions are on the PS3, Xbox 360 and PC. Out of those, I gamble playing it on GameHub is the way to go. But to just play it out of the box, it already runs great on Cemu now. When it comes to settings, there isn't much we'll tweak here. In audio settings, just make sure your TV volume is set to 100% or everything will feel quiet. And make sure we don't have gamepad audio on. In graphics, what will be important for certain games is adding a custom driver. You don't need this for some games, but for anyone willing to test more, then a particular driver might completely fix a game's problems. I'm going to leave this on system driver for the showcase, but we can actually set a game to boot with a particular driver by long pressing on it and going to edit profile. So I'll mention if we use a specific one for a specific game. The actual settings we'll want to tweak for games will be in this graphic packs option here. Make sure to press the download button in the top right and it'll find the packs for the games you have in your library. All these games have pretty self-explanatory options. If a game has fixes, you'll likely want to turn them on, and you might also get options to change resolution or even increase the FPS cap. If a game has something specific, I'll mention it in the showcase. Also, for using the gamepad, you need to swipe from the left when the game is open and make sure show pad is ticked. I'll be showing all the games here whether they work or not, so you know what to expect. There'll also be instances where a game works but its true potential isn't there yet, as for example the gyro controls are completely off center when they're activated and makes it impossible to play that way when it's expected. There's a lot of games to check out here, so let's just get cracking on. So the only reason 007 Legends is on here is because back when I was interested in checking it out, GameHub and PS3 emulation was not as good as it is now. It didn't used to work before because of a gamepad issue, but with the newest version of Cemu we can actually get into game now. Now I know this is not a well-liked James Bond game, but I was interested to see it running and it plays pretty perfectly now. But this is also a great example of a game utilizing the second screen in a unique way that makes playing a Wii U game on the Thor potentially better than its other ports. You can see the radar and you can also access your weapons on the fly, which are just cool features to have on a second screen. Adventure Time Explore the Dungeon, because, I don't know, is an action-adventure dungeon explorer and is one of the games I figured why not just grab on the Wii U. Like 007 Legends, it has ports on the PS3, 360, Windows and even 3DS, but it works solid here and seems like a good time if you're into this style of game. This one's unique in that the second screen doesn't really serve any purpose unless you have the game audio for the tablet on, as it will tell you hints and tips while you play. So I imagine for a lot of people this is better off anyway. Apart from that, the second screen offers no additional functionality, so it's up to you if you play this on the Wii U or not. Assassin's Creed Black Flag actually seems like a really cool port of the game for the Wii U. We'll start to notice a trend here that actually some of Ubisoft's games are awesome fits for the Wii U if they actually work. In this case, the audio glitches out early on and sounds horribly loud and distorted. The performance isn't great either, and adding a particular custom driver doesn't seem to help too much. Which is a shame because, as you can see on the bottom screen, we have a radar and possibly some other functionality. But if you must play Black Flag on your Thor, then you'll likely find better performance using GameHub. Oh god. Axiom Verge is an indie title that wears its Metroidvania inspiration on its sleeve. Chances are you've already played it if Metroidvanias are your thing. And on the Wii U we have the most unique version of the game, as Axiom Verge wasn't released for the 3DS. And so this is the only version which has a second screen that is actually useful. You can select your weapons and have access to your map on one screen. Or you can push the game to the second screen if needed. So for me, this is a perfect example of why you'd want a game on the Wii U and play it that way. And having this on the Thor makes it feel like the 3DS version that never existed. Batman Arkham Origins is a game I had on this list before GameHub got really good, and now I've already demonstrated it plays pretty decently on the Thor in GameHub if you wish to play it. On Wii U it still has issues and is pretty unplayable, and I think if you even somehow got to the open world part of the game it would probably crash. The menu is a good indicator of how problematic the game is, but if we add a custom driver to the mix by long pressing the game, going to edit game profile and scrolling down to custom driver, if I add the Mr. Purple T25 driver, then things improve a lot. There might be a driver that fixes the game up proper, but I don't know which one it is. Still, I think this game won't be truly playable until we get another update to Cemu. Deus Ex Human Revolution is a game I've shown working perfectly a couple of times now. It's ready to go and play right now and runs fantastically. Just be ready for some shader compilation going into new areas. For this I'm going to add the Biosensor MK1 driver, as it's one I've tested before and seemed to streamline things a bit. I reckon just adding any decent driver will help things. Human Revolution probably has one of the best uses of the gamepad on Wii U, and being able to access the map and inventory and such on the fly in this game is a really cool feature. This is a must-own title for Wii U emulation. With Darksiders 2, we have the option in the graphics packs to turn on a 60 FPS setting. We won't always be able to achieve this, so it's up to you if you want to try it, but I'll leave it on for this video. This game has crashed a couple of times for me, so I'm not sure if a particular driver will help with this, and obviously this is a game you can already play well on Switch or GameHub emulation if you want to. But there is some unique second screen functionality here that could be useful if the game was running perfectly. Maybe a title that needs to be checked again in a new update. Devil's Third is a Wii U exclusive which sadly doesn't offer any unique second screen functionality. You need to use a driver to fix some texture and caching problems. I've gone with the trusty biosensor MK1 again, but I've seen different results with different drivers. I actually played all of this last year on my Odin 2 Portal, and I have to say, it ended up being like an extremely mid Call of Duty style campaign with some wacky story attached. Not a great recommendation, but if you just need to run and gun something, it's not terrible. Dr. Luigi is also an exclusive to the Wii U, and it's just a spin on Dr. Mario, but with Luigi instead. Sadly, no unique use of the gamepad here, but it's a simple game that runs without issue. With DuckTales Remastered, I was actually just curious to see if there was anything unique about it with the touchscreen, but it's another game that just mirrors the main display. But it's not a huge file size and seems to run perfectly, so I figured why not show it in the showcase. Alternatively, you could try this on Android with PS3 emulation or on GameHub. If you're somehow unaware, GameHub lets you play your Steam games on your Android device, so as long as there is no issue playing it, you could just buy games on Steam and try them through GameHub. It's a nice sweet spot for emulation to be in, where we can still buy our games and support the developers whilst getting to choose how and where we play. Fast Racing Neo is another game I've shown off working perfectly before too. The intro to races is a bit scuffed, but afterwards it's fine. Maybe a certain driver will fix the kind of vertex problems we're seeing there, but apart from that, the frame rate is high and the game is nice and fast. Game & Wario is another exclusive to the Wii U. Unfortunately, even though the game runs, it's just not playable. Cemu still has this issue where if we try to use the gyro functionality, then it's completely off-center and we don't have a way to calibrate it. So to even attempt to try what it needs us to do, we have to hold the Thor in completely ridiculous ways to try. I really hope this is something that gets fixed soon, because there's a few games that rely on gyro that are fun to play. Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is yet another exclusive and another game I've shown working before. The premise is simple in that we just tap Kirby and draw lines for them to get around. The game is mirrored to both screens and there isn't much to see here, but you can use both screens to draw on, which is nice. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is also exclusive to the Wii U. This one has some graphical problems, so a driver will fix that. I used Biosensor MK1 again and was able to get into a match and start playing. Once you're into the game, the second screen just shows your points. Nothing crazy, but even just showing some stats I think is a nice simple use of the second screen. Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars needs a driver to start properly but crashes anyway. Once you try the first level, there's a certain platform I try to draw from and it crashes every time. Bit of a shame, but this is also on the 3DS, so you could play it there if you wanted to. Mass Effect 3 Special Edition is another game I've shown that works surprisingly well in Cemu. I think this one is worth experimenting with some drivers, but they are needed to get the best performance. Again, I've tried Biosensor MK1 and it seemed to do a good job for the most part. Second screen here is really cool for this as it shows a map of the area as well as enemies, so this is a unique way of playing the third Mass Effect game and it just looks really cool to see it like this on the Thor. Ninja Gaiden 3 I've shown before is kind of playable, but it still seems to have issues. Testing around with different drivers seemed to show different results, but they did help. The game sometimes seems to be running quite smooth, but the audio is stretched and distorted a lot. So I'm not exactly sure I'd consider this playable, and I'd worry it will have issues later on as well. The use of the second screen is simple but welcome addition though to the game, showing your move list and accessing some menus on the fly. I really wanted Need for Speed Most Wanted U to work here, and it's also another game that helps with drivers, and I'm using the Mesa Turnip driver revision 9v2 here, but it seems to always crash out during the tutorial and can't proceed any further. This would have been a cool version of the game to have, but the second screen only mirrors the main display and it also seems to be running at a locked 30 frames per second. I like my racing games to be 60 as they just feel so much nicer to play, so I'd probably recommend trying this through GameHub or something. Even so, hopefully a future update will get this game further along. Nintendo Land, much like Game & Wario, has games that require the use of gyro, and we cannot calibrate the gyro at all. So even though you can kind of play some stuff overall, it's a flawed experience because of this. And I'm really hoping the next update will offer some kind of fix for calibrating the gyro. I feel like I remember pressing a button to recenter the calibration to the center, but I must be thinking of something else. Paper Mario Color Splash, also a Wii U exclusive, now boots without a driver, but it needs one to fix some graphical errors with the characters. Luckily I still have my save here because the intro is excruciatingly long. I've shown this working before and I'm using the Biosensor MK1 driver here again. At this point I think a lot of people will think, what is this driver? I just haven't really tested many newer ones and have just gone with what worked for me. So I'm more than happy to hear recommendations with games on the Wii U here, especially as we can set them per game. But yeah, anyway, here's a little footage of Paper Mario Color Splash. Pikmin 3 can be played on the Switch, however we have some neat gamepad functionality here, and whenever I test out Pikmin I always get the urge to play them as they have a really neat and addictive gameplay loop. I did find aiming and throwing with Pikmin with the second screen a bit odd at first, but once you get used to it then it starts to feel more fun. No drivers are needed here, the game just works and I love seeing it work on the 4 just like this. Pokemon Rumble U is an eShop exclusive like Dr. Luigi U, and you just kind of run around with your Pokemon mashing the A button to take each other out. It runs on the system driver, but it even has some slowdowns on one of the drivers I tested. Maybe a particular driver would get the game running smoother, but I have no interest in playing this one, so maybe someone else can figure that out. Pushmo World I've also shown working perfectly before, and I love this series of games. This one's a sequel to the 3DS Pushmo, and the 3DS also has Crashmo and Stretchmo. These are all super fun games to play. There's no extra gamepad functionality with this one, but it doesn't really need it. You push and pull blocks so that you can save the children. It's as simple as that, but gets quite deceptive later. So this one's an awesome addition for when you're on the go and just need to sink into something quickly. Resident Evil Revelations on the Wii U is the HD version of the game, and I couldn't find anything the Wii U version has extra over the other versions except for the fact it has pretty decent gamepad functionality. You can quick swap your weapons, use herbs, use some quick slots, open the menu, and there's a map of the area that is in the middle. There's a 60 FPS setting in the graphics pack, but it doesn't seem to work for some reason. And unfortunately the game seems to want to pause now and then, probably due to some shader caching. So I wouldn't fully recommend it right now, but it is cool to see this version up and running. Strangely, I had no freezing when I tried out raid mode, so maybe it gets better over time. Sonic Lost World is a game I've shown before, needing a driver to help boot the game. Now it seems to boot no problem with the system driver. This one's exclusive to the Wii U and 3DS, but you can also get the game on Steam, so GameHub is an option. It's crazy to think half a year ago Cemu got a big update and PC emulation was still making strides. And now I can just regularly recommend to just play something on GameHub instead. The gamepad functionality here is pretty simple. It just shows how far through the level you are and some briefcase icon you can tap, probably to see the collectibles on the level. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove is the full Shovel Knight package for the Wii U, and they actually use the second screen to let you access your gear and weapons on the fly, which is nice. The gamepad functionality is a nice touch here, so this might be one of the best ways to play Shovel Knight on the Thor. Sniper Elite V2 is a game I played years ago, and I didn't even know there was a version on the Wii U. Apparently it's missing some of the fun DLC that made it so memorable, but it's cool to see there is some gamepad functionality here with a map and access to weapons. I thought it would be neat to control the sniper through the gamepad, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I had to use the Biosensor MK1 driver to fix some texture problems which didn't seem to always work, but the game still has insane bloom problems anyway, so I wouldn't say it was quite playable just yet. Now we enter a little section of unplayable games. Splinter Cell Blacklist boots, but unfortunately still doesn't get into game. Considering other Ubisoft games, I wouldn't have had high hopes for performance with this one anyway. However, I've already demonstrated with GameHub that you can play the PC version of this game really well on the Thor if you just crack Uplay and get past that. Star Fox Guard also boots, but isn't playable either. It seems to just stay in a never-ending loading screen and doesn't want to go further, which is a shame because it's a cute little tower defense that would have been a fun addition to have. Star Fox Zero is also not playable. We can get into game, but after running the tutorial for a bit, it always crashes. Nothing's changed here since the previous version of Cemu, so here's hoping the next update will have fixed this game. SteamWorld Collection boots and presents us with 2 games to play, but no matter which one we pick, the game will crash. We'll have to wait and see on this with the next update. Super Mario Maker really needs no introduction, and as far as I could tell, it seemed to work perfectly. It's not really my thing, and I'm not sure how much of this game loses its appeal if you can't go online with it. Maybe there's a way to get custom levels on here manually. There's also the 3DS version, but I'm not sure which is better. But it's a neat thing to have on here, especially if you have kids and they want to see what Mario Maker was like with 2 screens. Tank 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 is our next addition to games that do not boot. Tried a few drivers with this one just to see if we can get to the title screen, but seems like we're going to have to be waiting on this game too. I've already shown several times that Tekken Tag Tournament 2 runs beautifully on here, and currently it's probably the best running version you can play on Android right now. The second screen just gives you some preset moves you can use simply by tapping. You apparently can select certain moves to place here to try out and using a pinch if you find them difficult to execute, but yeah, this is an excellent version of the game. In my last video, I mentioned that I played the Wind Waker in its entirety on the Thor at 720p, and it worked very, very well, apart from one crash I had early on. I used the Biosensor MK1 driver here, but I think many drivers will help with whatever issues this game has. Gamepad functionality here is great as well, as we can easily access our items and save quickly, and having the map ready at all times is just so much nicer than flicking back and forth between a menu. Twilight Princess still has an issue with the minimap not rendering properly, but with a driver we can fix that up. I'm using my trusty Biosensor MK1 driver here again to do that. Much like Wind Waker, the second screen lets us access our items and minimap. We can take away the minimap on the top screen so we can look at it exclusively on the bottom screen if we like. Whenever I've tested this, it seemed to work very well. I've not personally tested outside of the village into Hyrule on the Wii U version, but I haven't heard of it having problems either. It's very cool to have both of these Zeldas on a handheld like this. The next game to join games that aren't working is Transformers Rise of the Darkspark. I've heard good things about this, but sadly it doesn't even boot. Again, one of the reasons I had this at the time is because I thought it was the only way to play a game like this on Android, but we have more options now with potentially PS3 emulation or even GameHub again. The Wonderful 101 was originally for the Wii U before it came to the Switch, and it's nice to see here it runs pretty much perfectly. The use of the gamepad is unique here, as you can use it to draw lines that will make your heroes act in certain ways, such as formations and building bridges. Watch Dogs is yet another Ubisoft title that isn't working, which is a shame because it seems to use the map really nicely with the gamepad. Hopefully another update to Cemu might get this and other games working. Wii Party U is another exclusive that at first seems promising, but whenever you try to start a game from its many options, it just seems to crash. Yoshi's Woolly World I've shown working before and is the last exclusive I have on my list of games. What is strange though is it seems to freeze a lot in its gameplay, and I don't remember that being the case when I tested it on other handhelds. I tried a couple of drivers but still got freezes. So for some reason when it's caching it's just doing it slower than I remember. I'm not sure if that's something to do with this update or not, but apart from that it runs pretty nicely. The last game here is ZombiU, and this is a game that has been crashing for me, and then I remembered you need a specific version of the game for it to run in Cemu. Something like a first release or maybe a PAL release, but that's how you'd get the game to run. The only reason I haven't sorted this out for this showcase is because I know ZombiU has some decent gamepad functionality that also uses the gyro. And with the gyro being scuffed, I think it would be better to show it off in an update that has that fixed. And that's the end of my Wii U Showcase here on the AYN Thor. The Wii U has an interesting library of titles, but out of the ones I've shown here, I hope I've shown off a decent selection of games that use the gamepad in ways that make them much more interesting to play on with the AYN Thor. I am hoping with the popularity of the Thor that there may be more interest to developing Cemu and getting updates faster than usual. And there's a few games here I'd love to see working because I think they would be how I'd want to play them on this dual screen device. So did I miss any titles that have genuinely good gamepad support? Let me know in the comments, and any suggestions for getting certain games working are absolutely welcome. Thanks for watching. Cheers.